King Oeneus forgot one thing, one name, and it didn't just cost him a crop, it cost him his entire bloodline. It was harvest season in Calydon. The king was throwing the feast of the century. He poured wine for Zeus. He burned fat for Hera. He gave a shout out to every god on Olympus, except one, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. In ancient Greece, the gods weren't just spirits. They were a dysfunctional royal family with the power of the sun. And Artemis? She was the most prideful of them all. To her, a missed prayer wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration of war. She didn't send an army. She didn't send a plague. She sent a nightmare. The 2,000-pound engine of destruction. The Calydonian Boar. This wasn't a pig. It was a divine biological weapon. Its eyes glowed with a sick red light. Its tusks were the size of swords. It didn't just eat the crops. It uprooted the economy. It slaughtered the livestock. It turned the vineyards into a graveyard. The king was paralyzed. His governance had created a crisis he couldn't solve. He was losing his kingdom because he forgot to say thank you. This is a classic leadership failure. Oeneus thought he was saving time by skipping the ritual. Instead, he created a spite debt that his son would have to pay with interest. If you're going to run a kingdom, you don't ignore the person who controls the food supply. You don't leave a power vacuum when a goddess is watching your borders. The king's son, Meleager, saw the kingdom bleeding. He realized his father was a liability. He stepped in and sent a message across the world. The boar is killing my people. Whoever kills it gets the glory and the hide. This was the Avengers of the Bronze Age. Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, arrived. Castor and Pollux, the divine twins, showed up. These were men who lived for status. But then, the atmosphere changed. A woman walked into the palace. Atalanta. She was a huntress raised by bears. She was faster, sharper, and colder than any man in the room. The reaction was immediate. Meleager's uncles, Plexippus and Toxius, were disgusted. They were the queen's brothers, the old guard. To them, a woman joining the hunt was an insult to their legacy. If she stays, we leave, Toxus growled, his hand on his sword. Our honor doesn't mix with hers. A woman has no place in a hunt for kings. Meleager looked at them. He didn't see family. He saw obsolete thinkers. She stays, he said. The boar doesn't care about your tradition. It only cares about who hits it first. If you want the glory, go earn it. This was Meleager's first strategic gamble. He chose merit over nepotism. In a crisis, that's the right move. But in a royal family, that's how you start a civil war. He was prioritizing the mission, but he was ignoring the political cost of wounding the pride of the people who held the keys to his palace. Before the hunt, there was a 9-day feast. This was a tactical disaster. 9 days of drinking, 9 days of the uncles mocking Atalanta. Are we here to hunt or to babysit? Toxius laughed, spilling wine on the table. Meleager, are you so weak you need a girl to protect you? Maybe she can stay behind and cook the meat once we actually do the work. Atalanta didn't say a word. She sharpened her arrows. Meleager's jaw was set. He was falling for her skill, but his uncles were digging a grave for the family. The king sat at the head of the table, silent. He didn't realize that a divided team is more dangerous than any monster. On day 10, they marched into the deep woods. It was a suffocating thicket. The boar didn't wait for them. It charged. It moved like a boulder falling down a mountain. Within the first minute, the elite were screaming. A hero named Ancaeus stepped forward to show off. "Watch a real man work," he shouted. The boar's tusk went through his body before he could even raise his spear. Then came the panic. Peleus, the future father of Achilles, threw his spear at the beast but missed, and killed his own teammate instead. The high-performance team was falling apart because they had no discipline. Only ego. Look at the logic here. The boar didn't have a plan, but the heroes didn't have a leader. Meleager was a great warrior, but he failed as a manager. He allowed the internal friction to turn into a lethal liability. The heroes were failing. They were hitting trees, hitting each other, and running for their lives. Then, a single arrow hissed through the air. Thwack! It buried itself right behind the boar's ear. Blood sprayed. The beast staggered. Everyone froze. The arrow belonged to Atalanta. The old guard was humiliated. They charged in blindly, desperate to reclaim their status. But it was Meleager who saw the opening. He drove his spear into the boar's flank, finding the heart. The 2,000-pound nightmare collapsed. The hunt was over. But the war was just beginning. Meleager stood over the carcass. By the law of the hunt, he held the trophy, the massive hide and the head. This was the ultimate status symbol. Meleager looked at the skin. Then he looked at Atalanta. "The prize is yours," he announced. "You drew first blood. Without that arrow, we'd all be dead. You are the true victor of Calydon." The silence was deafening. His uncle stepped forward. "Absolutely not," Plexippus growled. "The law says the prize stays with the bloodline. It goes to us. You are not giving our family's glory to a girl from the woods. This is our land. This is our kill." They grabbed the hide. They pushed Atalanta aside. They were asserting blood rights over merit. This was the breaking point. The uncles were protecting their brand equity, but they were doing it by robbing the person who actually did the work. Meleager had to choose, his family's greed or his own integrity. He was a prince trying to build a future, but his family was anchored in the past. Meleager's vision went red. He had spent 9 days listening to these men. He had watched them fail in the field. He saw them as parasites eating his kingdom's future. "Give it back to her," Meleager said. His voice was like grinding stones. "Make us, boy," Toxius laughed. "You're a prince, but we are your elders. We are the policy. We are the family. You would not dare raise a hand against your own blood." Meleager didn't argue. He didn't call a council. He drew his blade and drove it through Toxius's chest. Before Plexippus could even scream, Meleager's sword found his throat too. In 10 seconds, the two most powerful men in Calydon were dead, butchered by their own nephew in front of the greatest heroes of Greece. The hunt for the boar had officially turned into a coup against the family. News traveled to the palace faster than the hunters. Queen Althea, Meleager's mother, was waiting to celebrate. She expected a hero. Instead, she saw 2 carts carrying the bodies of her brothers. She didn't cry. She went cold. She looked at the blood on her son's hands, and she didn't see a savior. She saw a traitor who had liquidated his own blood for a stranger. She walked to her private chambers and opened a locked, heavy chest. Inside was the mortal asset. Meleager committed the ultimate sin of the heroic age, fratricide. He solved a short-term problem, the hide, with a long-term disaster, the murder of his kinsman. He forgot that in a monarchy, family is the only infrastructure you have. To understand what happened next, we have to go back 20 years. When Meleager was 7 days old, the 3 fates, the women who managed the destiny of the world, appeared in Althea's room. They pointed to a piece of wood burning in the fireplace. "Your son will live," they said, "only as long as that log remains unburned." Althea had reacted like a true owner. She snatched the log from the fire, put it out with water, and locked it away. For 20 years, her son's life was a physical object in a box. She had protected him with that log. She had saved his life every single day by not burning it. But now, the value of her son had plummeted. He had murdered her brothers. He had destroyed her family legacy. In her mind, the debt of blood had to be paid. She walked to the hearth. She built a massive fire. She looked at the charred, half-burnt log. "You were my son," she whispered, "but they were my brothers. You have severed the cord. Now, I will burn the brand." She threw the mortal asset into the flames. This is the ultimate emotional reversal. The woman who gave him life became his executioner. It shows that in a world of high-stakes honor, family is a resource that can be spent just as easily as gold. Althea didn't just kill her son. She closed the account of the Calydonian dynasty. She chose the ghosts of her brothers over the future of her child. Miles away, Meleager was marching home. He was holding Atalanta's hand. He was planning his future. He felt like the strongest man in the world. Suddenly, he gasped. It started as a warmth in his chest, then a searing heat. He clutched his stomach. His skin began to redden. There was no fire around him. No enemy was attacking. Yet he was burning from the inside out. His lungs felt like they were filled with boiling oil. He fell to his knees, screaming in an agony that no medicine could touch. "I'm on fire!" he roared. But there was no smoke, only the smell of his own skin charring from within. Back at the palace, the log was turning to white ash. As the last sliver of wood vanished into the fire, Meleager's heart stopped. He died in the dirt, his body smoking, miles from the mother who had just deleted him. The tragedy wasn't over. When the fire died down, the reality hit Althea. She had killed her only child. The grief was a second monster, worse than the boar. She took a blade and ended her own life. The king, seeing his wife, his son, and his brothers all dead, went into a catatonic shock. He sat on a throne in an empty palace, ruling over a graveyard. Boar was dead. The mission was a success, but the leadership team was 100% liquidated. They spent all their resources killing the monster, but they forgot to manage the human cost. This is what happens when you win the war but lose the peace. This wasn't just a family fight. It was a structural collapse. Calydon was one of the strongest kingdoms in Greece. Overnight, it became an empty house. The neighboring kings didn't see heroes. They saw a power vacuum. The hunt that destroyed a family successfully cleared the board for the next generation of tyrants. It proved that the heroic age was built on a flaw. The heroes were too volatile to manage. Their egos were a greater threat than any monster the gods could invent. The lesson? In any high-stakes environment, your biggest threat isn't the external monster, it's the internal friction. If you don't manage your family assets, you end up like Calydon, a graveyard with a dead pig in the middle. If you want to see how other elite teams like the Argonauts bankrupted themselves through bad ego management, hit that subscribe button. We're deconstructing the logic of the gods every week. Comment below. Was Meleager right to choose Atalanta over his family, or was this the ultimate management fail? Was Althea a monster or a victim of her own code? I want to see your logic. The monster is dead, but the throne is empty. Who's moving in next? Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Don't forget to check your mortal assets.